Thanks for coming back. This is Steve from Muller Gear. Today I wanted to just go over a few things that I'm a little frustrated with about the information out there about Sportsters. And that's what started this series about the Sportster, and just to share these things that aren't, or dispel these myths that just keep getting repeated over and over again. And maybe I'm too old, maybe I don't understand that they're a joke, but it sounds serious. And so these are the things that are killing me. First, if you remember, it was putting on the passenger pegs. And if you haven't seen that video, you should watch it. If you're going to put passenger pegs on your Sportster, literally tens of thousands of views have been to videos that tell you to take your exhaust off of your bike, which is absolutely ridiculous. You do not need to take the exhaust off of the Sportster to put passenger pegs on. For one thing, it's a huge task. There's tons of bolts involved. And if you don't buy new washers for right at the manifold, you don't buy new crush ring at the manifold, you could leak. And you can have all kinds of problems if you've got a leaking manifold. You can do it very easily. I show you how to do it in my video. So that's myth number one. You don't need to take your freaking exhaust off to put foot pegs on. I don't know why there are so many videos that say that. I lived here in the airport. Anyway, and the other thing is, there are write-ups. So you go to the review sections of, say, on Harley Davidson or on Revzilla, and everybody's telling you to take your foot pegs off. You just need simple tools. The Chapman tools work, like in my video. I just use a normal Torx bit off of the driver and a wrench. Works great, no problems. So that's myth number one. It's dispelled. I made the video, done with that one. But then two other myths pop up. And this is on a really popular channel. I'm not doing like a competition because look at my numbers. My numbers are terrible. But there's a vlogger that's telling people, oh, the Sportster is great, love the Sportster, but it sprays oil on you because it blows the oil out of the engine. Well, yeah, every vehicle on the planet, basically, with a internal combustion engine, is going to create oil vapor, and it's going to be expelled from the crankcase, and then that vapor usually gets put back into the air intake, and that oil vapor gets burned in the combustion process. So if you make too much oil vapor, it usually goes into a little container that drips, like a drip can or into your air box or overflow tube or something like that. And maybe this particular vlogger, this source of information, doesn't understand that when he took the factory air cleaning system off, air filter system, that he removed those vent tubes that reburn the oil vapor. And instead he's just directly ejecting that oil vapor out of his engine onto him. But in two different videos, there's this information saying, yes, Sportsters blow oil vapor, but just deal with it. It's a Sportster thing. If you're a tough guy or whatever, you just do it. And the fact of the matter is, don't put a cheap air filter on. If you're going to bypass the crankcase ventilation system, that oil vapor needs to go somewhere. If you choose to have it blow all over you, that's one thing. The other thing is, keep the stock air filter on there. Put a different air filter element, maybe a high-performance air filter element, so you don't have this issue of oil vapor blowing all over you. And then the third myth. The third myth is what the preload setting does on your bike. And again, it's an easy concept. I'm going to show you, but I can't believe the misinformation that's happening. So I just want making a record of this. I'm going to show you again, and if you've seen my other videos, you've seen the shocks over and over and over again. So here are the shocks, and here's the preload adjustment, okay? And you can look up a lot of this stuff online. There's great resources, but for some reason, the Sportster resources provide misinformation. So let's talk about a couple of things. One is you've got a spring here, and you've got the shock body here, and inside the shock body, that's where the damping occurs, okay? And you can look up springs and damping online. If you've taken like a college level physics class, you've probably heard this. This spring, you can tell, it's a constant rate spring, so the coils have the same spacing. So typically in a progressively wound spring, the coil distance will get smaller and smaller. And what that means is it's the same amount of force or weight to compress this some distance. So it's usually like pounds per inch. And what preload does is it compresses the spring to a point. Let's say right now it's compressed for me and the bike, so let's say it's compressed to the point of about, for argument's sake, let's say, 300 pounds. So to compress it any further, I need to add 300 plus more weight, and it will compress more past that point. What preload does is it conserves your travel length to prevent bottoming out. So what would happen with this spring is if I took the preload off and backed the preload all the way out, what would happen is it would compress, because there's zero force on the spring, it would compress at its rate to take up the force of me, or the weight of me, and the weight of the bike pushing on the spring. And what happens from there is you use up your travel. So the travel would shrink. So if you hit a bump, you bottom out. That's not good. So that's what preload does. Preload compresses the spring and simulates that it's already got that weight on it, so that when you sit on it, your body weight doesn't push the spring down that distance. It has to be the body weight plus the distance you've already compressed. So you can go look that up online about how springs behave, so on and so forth. So again, I heard online from a very popular vlogger saying, oh, if you put too much preload, you run out of travel. And that is absolutely not true. Now, it is true that if you put in too much preload and you don't leave sag, and sag is the amount that the shock does compress. When you sit on it, that's sag. If you have too much sag, you're going to lose your travel. And if you have too little sag, when you go over a void, and I said this in another video, you go over a void like a pothole or manhole cover, the wheel can't drop down, and it creates a jarring effect, and it makes the bike unstable. So anyway, the theme here is you don't need to take your exhaust off to put the passenger pegs on. It's tricky, but you can do it. You can get a Torx bit, just the bit, and a 1/4 inch wrench to that fastener to remove the rear master cylinder, and I've made a video about that. The other myth, again, Sportster does not spray oil on you unless you remove the factory air filter and you don't properly route the crankcase vents. The crankcase vent and air intake go together in the stock form so that any crankcase gases and oil gets reburned. And of course, adding preload does not take away from the travel in your suspension. So anyway, I might just be losing my mind, but those are facts. You can fact check me, but that's basically it. You have any questions or comments, or you want to, bust my balls, go ahead and do it. But I just want to get that stuff out there. Sportster's a great bike. Needs a little fine-tuning, customization, if you will, to make it rideable. But once it's rideable, it's a heck of a lot of fun. So anyway, be safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye.